Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Name's Marcus Tekkener. I'm chair of the Low Dosage chapter. Today, it is my privilege to hand over to Wayne Kitching, who is the go-between with the speaker today. Wayne is on our EXCO, and he is obviously a consultant, as you all know, involved in similar and related areas. So, Wayne, thank you very much for bringing the speaker on board today. I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Yeah, thank you. We are privileged today to have Harry Hofman, the CEO and co-founder of Open Access Energy, to talk to us today. He's going to talk about energy wheeling in South Africa's open energy market. It's a very relevant topic. As we all know, the electricity prices have increased dramatically in the last few years in South Africa. And also there is also the push for becoming more green and introducing more renewable energy and being more resilient, being more energy independent as well. And in this process, wheeling is a great mechanism for facilitating that. So and it is in the news. It is a very relevant topic. So I will just quickly read Harry's bio, and then we can let him start. Okay, so Harry Hofman is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Open Access Energy, OAE, which he established in 2021. OAE is the central infrastructure on which South Africa's wheeling market runs. It does not buy, sell, or take positions in energy. Through its Energy Pro platform, it operates the country's first multilateral wheeling marketplace, matching generation and demand and settling every transaction. And because it takes no side of its own, every participant can rely on it. Under his leadership, OAE connects independent power producers, traders, corporate off-takers, and municipalities through PPA structuring, matching, billing, settlement, and reconciliation, and sits at the center of the country's liberalizing electricity market. OAE is backed by climate technology investments, E3 Capital, Equator, and Factor E Ventures. A recognized voice on energy market reform, Harry believes that a liquid, open market for private power underpinned by accurate and standardized trading processes is central to expanding access for private generation and building confidence in every transaction. Prior to founding OAE, he spent more than a decade in senior commercial and innovation leadership across the technology and media sectors, including Chief Sales and Marketing Officer and Chief Innovation Officer at Tencent Africa, Head of Marketing at WeChat Africa, and earlier roles at Media24 and Naspers. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Harry.
Oh, thanks for the introduction. I don't know that guy, but thanks, Wayne.
Well, your assistant sent it to me, so so she knows you. So she knows the guy.
She's good PR there. I'm not going to talk about our business. I want to talk about sharing some learnings that we've had in the last 5 years and where we see the market is. And my story of getting involved in this market is when I started this company, I didn't even know what the kilowatt hour was, but I was quite excited about the liberalization of the market. And when I heard this word wheeling, which I still think is a weird term to use, but energy trading, or call it whatever you want, and that this is happening in South Africa, I was quite excited. I was excited for two reasons. One reason is what you guys mentioned at the intro, is that we have abundance of natural resources in wind and solar, and therefore, we could change our carbon emissions. It's one of the highest in the world, to an electricity grid that is bringing renewables into play. But the other thing I was quite excited about is the cost difference between renewables and existing electricity that we're getting from the grid. And I think that is interesting because that enables businesses to reduce their cost, to stable their cost of buying electricity in the longer term, and thus giving opportunity for industries to start growing and our economy to start growing. And in a country like South Africa, where we have shortage of electricity, I think that's quite important. So when I tell my investors that sit in America and Europe, I tell them that the opportunity is not necessarily a green opportunity. The opportunity is like, how do we get access to more affordable electricity? So the 4 topics I would like to cover today is, firstly, how municipalities can access renewable energy, making sense of the offers, and this is quite interesting, where we spend a lot of time to understand pricing in the market, and then how do you operationalize from where a contract is signed, and we see that in the market now. 4 years ago, contracts were signed, projects got to financial close, and now going into commercial execution. So the COD dates, and then how do you operationalize the power purchase agreement? And then I'm going to quickly talk about traditional wheeling versus virtual wheeling and the opportunities that virtual wheeling is bringing to this market. So I think for those that don't know, or most of you would know, wheeling is a accounting exercise. It doesn't really change any physical infrastructure except on the generation side, where there's a generation plant that pushes electrons into a grid. It's then transmitted over the grid to a site that consumes it. But there's no real infrastructure change or anything like that, and there's no capital layout required for the buyer of that electricity. So if you just had to look at the three steps and what each step means, you have somebody that builds a renewable plant, and so it could be a producer or it could be a trader. So in South Africa, NERSA licensed traders, and they're allowed to buy and sell electricity. So a lot of the producers are looking for long-term contracts, so up to 20 years contracts with buyers, and then traders come in currently in the current market, and they buy long and they sell short. So they will buy for, say, 20 years, and then they'll sell it to buyers for shorter term. And we see some of these agreements have reduced from 10 to 5, and now currently there's 1 year PPAs in the market. But the producer basically builds the plant, owns a plant, runs the plant, and then the buyer doesn't have to worry about the capital. There's no equipment, no land that they own or anything like that. Wheeling, again, the energy flows over the network. There's no physical wire, so this plant can be somewhere in the Northern Cape or the Eastern Cape, and the consumption can happen in Gauteng or anywhere in South Africa. And so it's not really that it's a physical wire, it's a physical transmission, but it's a counting transmission. And then the customer, there's different ways, but the customer pays his normal bill. He then gets a rebate or credit on his, he gets a credit on his bill. And in that, a difference between the credit and his tariff is actually they call it the use of system fee that's paid to the distributor. And in this model, kind of the distributor will stay whole. There are 3 kinds of wheeling in South Africa. So there's the Eskom to Eskom. So it's an Eskom connected generator that is wheeling to a Eskom connected customer. So Eskom meters and settles both ends. And we see a lot of those transactions happening in the market. I think, I'm using rough numbers, but since we started renewable energy projects in South Africa with the REAP program in like 2008 to date, there's about 6 gigawatt of renewables being deployed in South Africa. In the next 2 years, we see about 7.5 gigawatt of renewables being deployed. And those transactions are mostly Eskom to Eskom transactions. And then you also get Eskom to municipal transactions. Those transactions are also happening in the market. One of them has recently been published with Etana and Growthpoint that have done a transaction where they wheeled from the Eskom hydro plant, from the Eskom grid, to Growthpoint facilities in the city of Cape Town. And there, the municipality passes the credit through to the consumer. And then there's also wheeling inside a municipality, and that's where the generator is connected to the municipal network, and the municipality then does the meters and settles. And we've done a transaction like that in the city of Cape Town, and there's a lot of other municipalities that's doing these transactions. We also did one in George municipality. So revenue neutrality underpins all three. So the distributor is always whole. The rebate is the wholesale rebate usually, and then the distributor still retains their use of system charge. So how can municipalities access renewable energies? And for me, it was quite interesting in the last 5 years to see how people have tried to push wheeling to municipalities. But now we also see that there's opportunities for municipalities to also procure their own energy. The challenge is still bankability. So the funders want to know, if they look at the municipality, will the municipality, if there's whatever the contract period is, will the municipality be able to pay the fee over that contracted period? So there's two routes for municipalities for renewable energy. The first one is to wheel, and the second one is to outright purchase. So to wheel is kind of easy because the off-taker basically banks it. So say, for example, you want to wheel to a customer in a municipality. The customer is a listed company. The funders of these projects and plants are quite comfortable saying that we know this is company X, they're blue chip, they're listed, they probably bank with us. So we don't mind wheeling and banking a 20-year contract, whatever the period is with that customer. And so this gives the municipality access to renewable energy on their grid, but that's banked through the buyer. The risk sits with the off-taker. So the municipality does not take any risk. And with this model, the municipality can stay whole because they will charge the customer for their normal tariff. They will then give the customer a rebate on what they would have paid Eskom. So that would be or the wholesale price or the tariff that they're on. And there, the IPP or trader will have to compete on price with the wholesale price, and that will be the cost savings. An example here is, again, like George municipality allows producers to wheel to customers across the municipality. And those transactions have been happening for the last 3 or 4 years. So the big thing about wheeling is it enables the municipality, they don't have to put guarantees down, they're not banking a project, and they don't have to stand any risk, and there's actually no procurement that happens. Wheeling is more service than the buying of electricity. The second route B, is the buying energy outright, and this is the one that becomes very interesting, because with the outright purchase, there's massive savings that comes to the municipality. We recently did a estimate for savings for a municipality of the first year. It's close to 86 million rand that they would save in their first year savings, and then if they sign an agreement over 10 years, I mean the savings becomes compound to that amount. It can be Eskom connected, so you could wheel, or a municipality could buy from a generator that's Eskom connected, and that makes sense if you're a municipality where there's not necessarily good wind or good solar, or you don't have access to land. Land is quite expensive. Then Eskom connected, but municipal connected has also shown a lot of cost savings for the municipality if that project is connected to the municipal grid. But bankability is still the big challenge, and how a lot of these funders look at it is, and I'm talking about municipalities in general, so I'm not necessarily talking about municipalities that are in good standing, but not all municipalities will be able to bank projects like this to buy the electricity, because the funders will look at it and say, well, these municipalities are in bad debt with Eskom. How will we be able to collect from them? So everyone in the market, or a lot of people in the market, is currently looking at different solutions to make municipalities bankable. And one mechanism is the use of prepaid collection. So we know that prepaid collection is a very good way of collecting funds for electricity in municipalities. And if you can ring fence that into an escrow, it secures payment and can make the deal bankable. So using that collection of the prepaid, being able to settle the supplier, being the IPP or the trader, could be a mechanism. And there's a couple of municipalities and banks and institutions that currently looking at these kind of offers to make a municipality bankable. There's also even, some of these models are looking at how they could use this escrow to also settle the Eskom bill, and putting them back into good standing with Eskom. So the question is why a municipal connected generator matters. And it's quite interesting with a lot of the changes in tariffs, that if you look at a generator, so this is for a municipality buying electricity. This is not for an off-taker buying electricity. But if you're wheeling from an Eskom connected generator to a municipal point of delivery, then you will only receive the WEPS or the wholesale energy credit. You continue to pay your other Eskom charges, legacy charges, subsidies, or auxiliary and capacity, and all retain and stay exactly the same. But if you have a generator that's connected to the municipality and you're wheeling it to the municipality, then there's all sorts of other bonuses. So active energy charges falls, and including losses, and there's also demand charges that could reduce. And so it's quite interesting. I just came back from a meeting with a municipality, and although they very excited about the cost savings they can see from buying renewable energy, their biggest challenge is how do they get access to more demand, and building this embedded solutions can help them to get access to more demand, and also potentially reduce their demand costs. And I think I don't even have to explain this slide. Is all very clever engineers on this call that would understand this, but basically by building an embedded generator, there's a lot more demand created within, and we're not just talking about PV, we're talking about BESS and all sorts of solutions to provide a demand shift inside a municipality that has larger cost savings than just the active energy rebate, which comes into play when you wheel from a Eskom connected generator. So there was certain pros and cons of building a municipal connected generator. Again, when I talk about this, it's not that the municipality is actually building these facilities, it's that the private enterprise build these facilities. So I was earlier today in a discussion with a municipality where there's a private entity that's willing to fund and develop a project and then selling that electrons to the municipality. So the municipality is not managing or operating this. They would buy the electricity and obviously reduce their energy costs. So the pros of having a municipal connected generator compared to a Eskom connected generator is obviously the lower demand charges. It also, there's benefit if it's wheeled to customers. Again, you can have there's much more financial benefit with demand charges that could be reduced, other charges that are not charged if you're wheeling with a municipal connected generator, and the savings is larger on a direct purchase. The cons are the funders carry the offtake risk. So if the local offtaker exits, the energy can only be re-wheeled within the municipality. They can't wheel it into the Eskom network. In many, like say KZN coastal areas, there's low solar and wind yield, and say for example in the Northern Cape, and then there's also the challenge of limited space. So the example of the funder carrying the offtake risk is a 10 megawatt plant in a municipality wheeled to a customer cannot be redirected to a data center elsewhere. So on the Eskom grid, if I wheel on the Eskom grid and that customer cancels the contract, then I can still wheel it onto the grid with other Eskom customers. But you can't do that if you're connected to the municipal grid. Great. The second thing is that we see in the market is pricing. And I think the two messages that I would like to get across, and that we frequently speak to on a daily basis to customers that are willing to buy electricity, is to understand that one, the PPA price is not the most important factor. I actually saw a municipal tender, and from the rating, 90% of the rating went to price. And price is really not important, and I'll explain why. And the second thing is that risk is very important. So you need to understand that price is not important, but in a risk and where the risk lies is quite important. So, and I think this is just the evolution that we've had. You know, in South Africa, we didn't really start with the liberalized market on the grid, the Eskom grid and municipal grids. We started with rooftop solar, CNI solar, and that. And so you typically see people that want to buy electricity, they use the reference for building rooftop solar. So if I had a factory, I had some rooftop space and I could put 50 panels on top, then I would ask 3 suppliers to come and pitch, and I'll work out what's the kilowatt hour price. And, you know, I'll compare the 3. So if everything is equal, same roof, same amount of solar panels and everything, then I can quickly establish where the pricing is per kilowatt hour. But with wheeling and the era that we're going in now, that's not the case. If I have a PPA price of R1 for wind and R1 for solar, I can't compare the two. If I have a PPA price for R1 for a plant that is in Limpopo and R1 for a plant that is in the Northern Cape, same PV, same size, everything, I can't compare the two because the yield will be different from each other. So you cannot compare PPAs in the wheeling space on just price alone. The shape of the energy that's delivered against the load, and the terms and the risk needs to be priced. So I always use the example that, you know, a PPA is like buying a car. You have your windscreen price, it's your base model, and then you have to decide if you want air conditioning, electric windows, longer warranty, and that ultimately gets you to your price. So, and a PPA is really not different to that. Tenor, security, wheeling base, energy profile, all of this has an impact on the market. So it's not as simple as like saying, you know, comparing apples with apples. And that's the challenge. We see that there are so many different traders in the market, so many different IPPs, and people that want to buy energy sit with 10 different proposals in front of them. And most of them go and say, I want the cheapest price, but I want the benefits of this other proposal here. And it's not really comparable. Again, just to further illustrate this point that you can have 2 prices, and this is just the example of using 2 different technologies. So you can have the same PPI price, 2 different technologies, depending on what your consumption load is. It can have drastic different savings outcomes. So, and then that's what we think is quite important for you to look at, is like, actually, what is this savings? But then the question is that how do you compare savings with all these different offers on the table? So again, this is an example of, you know, we have 2 offers. The first year saving on offer A is 1.3. Offer B is a higher saving, but it's a year later. And so the offer A could potentially be the better offer, although the savings is not the same, because the savings starts early and escalates on a lower base. So your cost savings in your last year on offer B might be much higher. And so it's small little issues like this. For example, what's the COD date that creates the difference between the 2 savings. So even if you have all these proposals in front of you, all these proposals from IPPs and traders, and you've got all the different pricing, and you say, but let's go and look at savings. Then how do you compare the savings with each other where the date of delivery might be not in sync with each other? And so there's other factors that also comes into play here. Location, the different regions have different yield escalations. So what is the escalation for all these different offers on the table? Some are CPI, some are 7%. So one of the price might be higher, but the escalation might be lower. A lot of these suppliers have different forecasts for Eskom escalation. What is the guarantees? How much electricity are they going to actually provide you? So somebody might give you a bigger cost saving, but they're going to give you much more electricity and you have a bigger commitment to that. And then there's like guarantees, parent company guarantees, all of this comes into play and makes it very difficult then to compare all these different offers with each other. And so we look at like buying the savings, not the rate. And we actually look at the NPV, the savings. So what we do is we look at all these different offers on the table and try and compare them with each other and then say, this is your NPV savings per megawatt hour. And then it might be that you have a project where the PPA price is much higher than another project. But because your penetration in your peak time is much higher than your standard off-peak time, the cost savings is more beneficial. And this is quite important when you look at the way that you want to purchase energy. So some other considerations when you're looking at this is, what is the escalation for the wholesale price for Eskom, profile match, how well does your profile from your business or your municipality fit the profile of the generator? What's the discount rate, tenure, date? And then issues like plant degradation is also important to look at. So one of the things, other things we see in the market currently is that a lot of these PPAs were drafted about 4 years ago, and now they need to be operationalized. And there's some interesting challenges that the market faces there. So 4 years ago, people were thinking this is how the market is going to be today, and there's certain gaps there. So when you take a PPA and have to execute in the PPA, so now you've bought the electricity, some of these contracts are up to 100, 300 pages, you've signed this, now you need to execute on that. And we see this quite challenging in the market. So you first have to decode the contract. You have to see what is the commercial terms, tariff, escalation, deal type, guarantees, penalties. Then, identify the different parties, the different assets. Where's all the metering points? What is the rules for the network? So if you want to wheel to City of Cape Town from Eskom, there's different rules to Ekurhuleni, to Eskom. Then you have to set up the business rules because the generator might have different off-takers on different tariffs with different guarantees. You need to get the proper data feeds for metering. You need to set up the operating rhythm. So there needs to be a reconciliation done every month. And then you have to validate this before going live. And all these points take a lot of time. And there's usually gaps between the contract and how to operationalize this. Then there's the actual operationalizing. So what's the responsibilities of the generator and what's the responsibilities of the off-taker? And, this is quite exciting because we see a lot of these being executed currently in the market. So from a generator, needs to maintain the asset, keep the generation meter data current, log events, so you will all see in the news, there's curtailment that's happening of some of these generators. So that impacts the contract and that needs to be logged. You need to run a monthly workflow, forecast, confirm events, allocate energy, balance back to sites. Then there's a submission that needs to run to Eskom. There's a reconciliation that needs to happen between the real data. And then there's bills and settlement and pro formas, adjustments, and final invoices that needs to be done before the end of the month. So these are all activities that the generator is responsible for. And then on the off-taker side, with the buyer side, buyer needs to maintain its meters, Eskom accounts, make sure the tariffs are correct, submit consumption forecast, log consumption events, if there's load shedding or network outages, nominate energy across different PODs by time of use period, and then reconcile and confirm that the credit is arrived on their bill correctly. So where there's some issues we see in the market or challenges that we see in the market is, there's billing cycle mismatches, in the PPA, it might talk about calendar months, but actually the generator and the off-taker are on different billing cycles. There's all sorts of obligations inside the contract that hasn't been reviewed in 4 years. And the reconciliation between the actual meter data, the forecasted meter data, check meter data, and actual meter data is quite important. And we see that there's, potential of up to 6% breakage in billing if these transactions aren't managed properly from a buyer and from a seller point of view. Lastly, virtual wheeling. For those of you who don't know, there's two kind of wheeling, let's call it mechanisms in South Africa. There's traditional wheeling and virtual wheeling. Traditional wheeling is what we've had in the market up till end of last year. It's a credit on the customer's bill. You need to update your amended supply agreement. You need to update deposits. It works very well for Eskom connected customers. If you want to wheel to a municipality like City of Cape Town, they need a wheeling framework. It needs to be adopted. It works very well for medium and high voltage customers, and the customers must be on a time of use tariff. Virtual wheeling is a rebate system. There's a cash rebate that's paid within 90 days. There's no change on the supply agreement or deposit. It reaches across Eskom and municipal customers, HV, MV, and LV. The only prerequisite is that the customer or the municipality must be in good standing with Eskom to qualify. What makes virtual wheeling bankable? There's a way, the way that virtual wheeling works is you have to submit the whole load of a meter, and that enables buyers on the virtual wheeling network to actually balance an estate. So the way we see virtual wheeling playing out is that buyers will aggregate a large load of smaller customers, and it's been in the press. Vodacom has already been doing this, wheeling to their base stations that are Eskom connected and municipal connected. And so on a very simplistic level, if you have contracted as a generator with an off-taker on virtual wheeling and the PPA is for 2 units, the customer has consumed 10 units, you can actually submit the 10 units to your rebate. So it works very well for Eskom customers. It works very well for municipalities like City of Cape Town that's in good standing, but it's a challenge for weaker municipalities where you need to offset the risk on other Eskom loads. I'm going to leave it there and then leave it open for if there's any questions.
Anybody is welcome to type a question in the chat box. Maputi, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Wayne. And Gyro, thank you for such a great presentation on such a very relevant topic. Mine is more of a comment. And you mentioned in your presentation the likes of George, who are also doing wheeling, which I've been fortunate to work with them in terms of their tariffs. And I think it becomes very important, especially for municipalities, if they are entering this journey and looking to go into wheeling or connecting renewable energy plants into their systems, that they get their tariffs looking as cost reflexive as possible. So them having an understanding of the energy portion of the cost, the infrastructure portion of the cost, and the services as well, so that they can enable wheeling to also exist within their systems, because it becomes very difficult to now develop wheeling fees and things like that if you don't have a good understanding of your unbundled tariff, basically. Yeah. But no, it's such a great presentation, and I really hope particularly colleagues from the municipality get a bit more clearer picture on how they can participate in the energy market when it comes to things like wheeling and procuring energy.
So I think what wheeling has done is, if you understand the principle of being revenue neutral, you basically, what you would have paid Eskom, you're passing that credit over to the customer. So you're not, really if let's say if it's a wheel transaction from the Eskom connected generator, it has no real negative impact on your net revenue. Obviously, on your turnover, it will have a negative impact, but on your net revenue, it has no real impact because you would have paid Eskom that. Now you're not going to pay Eskom that. The challenge with that is it starts exposing, tariffs that are not correctly put together, and so you suddenly see that municipalities are exposed on their time of use tariffs, and even if they would have paid Eskom that, their use of system fees would still not be able to cover what they should have paid Eskom. So that definitely is highlighting the issue that how tariffs are structured and how municipalities need to think about tariffs. We've definitely come across municipalities that have made changes to their tariff structures, and now Wheeling has exposed it where actually that's a negative to them. But it would still be a negative because they still have to pay Eskom that fee. And this is why I think the model where embedded generation in municipalities where it makes sense is very beneficial to municipalities, because it's not just the active energy benefit, it's a bunch of other benefits and fees that's not charged to them. So the benefit is much bigger than just wheeling from Eskom.
Okay, thank you, Gerrie. I see a question from Karen. I will read it. I also wanted to ask some about how that rebate works in virtual wheeling, but we take it a step back. Karen is asking, please explain what is virtual wheeling a bit more for us not familiar with the wheeling environment. Yeah, we have some time. You can maybe just readdress that because it's a new concept to people, especially in the not in the day-to-day customer kind of focused market.
Brilliant. Yeah, sorry, I wanted to get to the question side. I didn't want you to stop me halfway. So, and virtual wheeling takes a bit more time to catch it. Trust me, I had to sit in front of whiteboards a couple of times to first understand it. But the mechanism of wheeling, traditional wheeling, so this is Eskom wheeling frameworks. So the one is traditional wheeling. That's what we've had up to date. And then last year we started with the virtual wheeling in the market. Now, traditional wheeling is I've got a generator, I'm wheeling to a point of delivery, the customer gets the normal bill, and on the bill is a credit from Eskom. Let's just talk Eskom to Eskom. There's a credit from Eskom, and that credit is the wholesale price. The customer pays the normal tariff minus the rebate, which is the wholesale price. And every month they settle that. The challenge with that is you can only wheel to MV customers and HV customers, and there are a lot of LV customers and municipal customers all over South Africa that want to get access to renewable energy but cannot get access to it. So Eskom went and said, but what if we can aggregate, let's call it metadata, and we can aggregate Eskom metadata and we can aggregate municipal connected metadata, and we put that in a pool, and then we say, if a buyer, I'm going to use the example out in the market currently. Vodacom buys electricity. They buy from an IPP and they buy a certain amount of energy. And if they can prove that they consume that energy, then Eskom will pay them a rebate. The wholesale rebate will pay that out to them. So it's not a credit mechanism, and it's a rebate mechanism. So the Vodacom then goes and they take all their base stations that's Eskom connected. They have base stations that are municipalities, and they take all that metadata for each account, 30-minute metadata for the whole month. They submit it to Eskom, and Eskom says, okay, you bought X amount and you've now proven that you've consumed that, and we'll pay a rebate out to you. So that allows aggregation for big portfolio customers. It allows aggregation for players like Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, people that have distributed LV all over South Africa. It also alleviates the challenges that Eskom have to manage all these little bills and all these credits on their bills. So this is a mechanism that's been, and it was actually started with Andre de Ruyter, started it back in the day, and Vodacom was a big supporter of virtual wheeling, and they were the first company to do virtual wheeling. We are now doing a virtual wheeling transaction for a trader where we're going to virtual wheel to about 350 points of delivery. So we are quite excited about virtual wheeling and how that accesses markets that traditionally or customers that traditionally wouldn't get access to renewable energy.
Okay, thank you, Harry. Yeah, I have a question. I think I know what the answer is, but if you can explain, if you have a municipal connected generator, and then for some reason you have an outage and your generator is unable to deliver that power, that energy, what will happen to the buyer? What will happen to the bill? Are there any things like deemed energy or anything like that and that come in play?
Yeah, so it depends on the contract that it exists between the generator and the buyer. So it could be that there's deemed energy, and then obviously the generator will have to show proof of that deemed energy. We also see that most of these transactions, let's talk about the Eskom network, and we've also, in George Municipality, the recon happens on a monthly basis. So it's not actually that we are matching 30 minutes generation with 30 minutes consumption every half an hour, although that is the mechanism that City of Cape Town has used for their bilaterals. So in George Municipality, say for example, the generator goes or the off-taker goes off. There's a network event that happens on a weekend, so on a Saturday, that off-peak wouldn't be affected for that Saturday, but would roll over to off-peak for other parts of the month. And so you're able to kind of catch up. And usually generators don't go and commit to 100% delivery of a customer's load. It's usually a smaller percentage, so anything between 30 and 60% of the customer's load. So even though the generator might have had outage or the off-taker might have had outage, they could still reach those commitments. And those commitments are quite interesting. We've done modeling for load shedding on level 6 and onwards on, can you still meet those commitments? And in these contracts, the generator wants to make sure that he gets a commitment from the off-taker that they will consume the energy. But the off-taker also wants, or the buyer also wants a commitment that they're going to be delivered that energy. And then there's penalties that come into play on both sides on who, if this one doesn't meet it, then what's the penalty of the other one? And again, the balance of that risk dictates the costing and the price of the PPA. But yeah, to your point, it all depends on what the contract is. And if we look at currently in the press, there's a lot of talk about curtailment happening on a lot of the REAP projects, and these IPPs have submitted their deemed energy, and Eskom is not paying them for the deemed energy. So, it all depends again on what the contract states and how that works.
Okay, thank you, Harry. I see Maputi has another question.
Thanks, Wayne. While you were explaining about the virtual wheeling, I got like two quick questions that I wanted to ask. The first of which, when you spoke about aggregating of the load and delivering this energy to these customers, I wanted to know whether this is still at that phase where it's maybe one business that's a franchise, or for example, banks which have multiple branches. Or has it gotten to a point now where, for example, a doctor with a private practice can decide to then participate in virtual wheeling? So are we still at that point where you'll get that one big customer with multiple locations and their load is essentially aggregated in these transactions? Or have we gotten to a point where it's now a small power user, like in the example of like a doctor with a private practice, and they decide they want to procure alternative energy?
So I think we're definitely moving in that direction. I don't think we're 100% there, just because of the movement of the market. So IPPs and traders still want to go for big deals. They want to still sell to the big energy consumers. So like all the mines and smelters and all these big players have bought their energy, and their generation is currently in development. But as that market starts to be saturated, there's definitely moving into smaller customers, and then aggregation becomes quite interesting. So I definitely see a space where you will have people like banks offering this to their customers. So you see a lot of the banks already playing in this space, on all different sides, on the trading side, but also on the funding side. So I think, Discovery Green is in this space as well. That's also consumer facing products. So I think definitely that's the direction that we would go into, where anyone can buy electricity. They don't have to, as long as they own the metadata, they can buy electricity.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Gerrie, this is intriguing to me that you have a 300-page contract, and you've got it looks like you've algorithmized its adjudication. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think where we stand in our business is we've got a platform that we've developed over the last couple of years, understanding what all these different permutations are. And so what we do is, and it's interesting where the market is. I think a lot of these contracts are very bespoke. There's no standardization. And we know if you look at other markets like Europe, it all goes down to standardization as the customer segment becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So we can't give that, doctor a 300-page PPA to sign, but we can probably give him something like a cell phone contract, to sign, and he'll probably not even look at it. I was talking to somebody this morning. I think there's only 2 contracts in your life that you sign for 20 years, and that's probably like a bond on your house and marriage, and at least one of them there's an easy exit clause. But so we definitely see how these PPAs are evolving, but they are super complicated at the moment. And so because both parties are risk averse, for what's going to happen in the next 20 years, what will happen with the climate, we suddenly see guys bringing out insurance products for climate change, so these, what's going to happen with tariff, what's going to happen with the grid. So all these different permutations are being managed in these contracts. And we've definitely seen that the way these contracts are becoming complicated is also interesting. So the ones that were written when the market just opened nearly 5 years ago, are much more simple. It's like, we'll generate this and you buy this and you pay us. If you use it or not use it, you're going to pay us. Now it's like we need to make sure that we have a certain level of production. What is the sun doing? What is the wind doing? What's all of this doing? And every month we need to tell you that of what we've produced, we have guaranteed you a certain amount. And if we don't produce it, we can catch it up in this period, and then we have to pay this penalty, and this penalty is calculated on this, and it becomes quite complicated. So at the moment, it's quite a hefty task in deciphering, like how we call it, decoding a PPA. So when we work with a client, the first thing is we start with the PPA and start understanding how that fits into our system. And even with customers, so let's call it IPPs and traders, their PPAs are evolving. So it's not that their PPAs are not the same as what it was 5 years ago. And it's because what was 5 years ago in the market is probably not relevant today. You can't sell that today.
Yeah, thank you. My question was basically searching at what kind of philosophy you used to sort of make sense of this and operationalization it. So thank you for going some way down that path. Second question is, I'm looking at the solar market in South Africa, the solar home side of things, and I see there's probably about 1.6 million homes now that have solar systems. What's the chance or the risk that somebody's going to aggregate that and walk in with a contract for wheeling that?
Yeah, I mean, that was, when I left my previous job at Tencent and looked at this opportunity, that was the first opportunity I looked at, is saying, how can you build a decentralized battery? And, it only made sense if you could wheel, So in a municipality like George, although, let's say the regulatory framework is not there. From a technical point of view, you can wheel to any customer that has got a time of use tariff and like LV or NV. And the system that is doing the billing there that we've developed is able to manage those transactions. So anyone could sell to anyone in there. So you could have, technically an aggregator or trader going into that market and just saying, well, I'm going to aggregate everyone's rooftop solar and go and sell it to a large power user there. That is possible.
Yes, I guess everybody's looking for some level of windfall gains. I was just wondering what the risk was like, and I think you've answered that. This is my last comment from my side. Do you perceive a sort of a 6% breakage in billing as a big number or a small number?
Yeah, so I think that's still very conservative, and that is the challenge for the buyer of electricity. So when we started looking at this, the market, we very much looked at the seller of electricity and ensuring that they could enforce their contracts. But we quickly realized that if they don't have proper systems and you're buying electricity, who's going to check on these guys? And if you just take into account that 300 and something pages contract, it's impossible for somebody that is a buyer of electricity that doesn't have a dedicated energy buying team like some of these big mines and big consumers to run these different permutations on an Excel sheet on a monthly basis. So, you're going to just end up trusting your supplier that they've supplied you the right amount of electricity and that everything is right. And if you just leave it over to them, are you just happy to trust them? We're talking about quite sizable numbers, I don't think for that doctor, that is buying, a couple of kilowatt hours or megawatt hours maybe in a month, that might be of such a big issue. But definitely for the larger customers, the CNI customers, and we see it in the rooftop solar space, guys bought into PPAs and bought into plants that were promised certain savings, and then those savings don't realize. And even 3 years after the commissioning, if you ask somebody in those businesses, how are they tracking based on their initial business plan? None of them can tell you that, So we definitely see that there's an opportunity to help buyers to get a level of comfort that they are, especially for where savings where buyers want savings to be guaranteed, because the mechanisms that are in these power purchase agreements are that if you don't deliver, and if all's equal, the weather was right and all of that, if you don't deliver, you need to pay a penalty, and that needs to be tracked, and those penalties can become sophisticated. And if that's part of your business case, then you need to be able to track that.
Are you foreseeing something like an ombudsman type office arriving for this area to deal with the arbitrations and so on?
I don't think anyone is going to put these contracts in public domain. These contracts are quite proprietary, so it's a commercial contract, so it's going to be, and it's even the ombudsman would have to have, quite a sizable team to manage it. So I think the solution is software and offering that software, to make sure that everyone sticks to the contract, so it's, and that's ultimately what wheeling is about, is like managing a contract. It's not about actually electrons, or it's not actually an engineering exercise. It's more accounting and a contractual exercise.
Yes, I think the ombudsman is only relevant where you've got a big power difference in the parties, and this is not so. So thank you very much. Folks in the audience, I've occupied the time a bit too much. Are there any other questions from those in the audience? Okay, Gerjo, looks like we have nothing else. I think you've stunned them for the moment, and we will hopefully see more questions arriving in future. And my perception is that this market is still an evolving thing, and what we're going to find is, in a year's time, that it's changed again and matured in different ways. So I wish you all the best of luck with your endeavors. And from Load Research chapter side, I would like to thank you very much for presenting and at least getting rid of some of the lack of knowledge in this area for us. And we may very well call you back in a matter of time to see how things are going. I see we're getting claps from those in the audience. We have municipal engineers in here as well, and guys on the consulting side. So thank you very much from Load Research Chapter. We really appreciate your time, and we will study this recording with great interest.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to email me if you have any further questions. It's gerdu@openaccess.energy. If you have any questions, you're welcome to see me, and I will anytime come talk to you again. I can only share what I've learned. So yeah, I hope that helps.
What you've learned has already changed our outlook. Thank you so much
Thanks.
once again, and we wish you all the best in future.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye then. Cheers.